Just seeing if I had a hot mic or not.
All right, in the essence of making sure that we give ourselves plenty of time to get through the budget tonight, we'll get started. And I do understand we always like to keep a separation of church and state, but I would swear we're in church tonight with all the department heads sitting in the back of the room. I believe all the commissioners did clean up tonight to come, but maybe not since there's a big separation here, but we'll get through it. I just had to laugh and chuckle, but Al, roll call.
Benson.
Here.
Brunig.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Minor.
Here.
Schramm.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Villanueva.
Present.
Mayor Moser.
Here.
City Manager Leon.
Here.
Adam, you want to maybe get that back door? I'm getting a lot of feedback from outside voices here somewhere. All right, now's the time and the place for anybody in the public that wants to make an appearance in front of the City Commission of something not on the agenda. All right, seeing no movement to the front of the City Commission chamber, then I will go ahead and turn it over to City Manager Leon for the presentation of the proposed 2023 budget.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the commission. We got a little competing noise with Planning Commission going on right now, and when that meeting's over, we'll prop that door back open and Dave Mingo will be coming in. So that's where he is. Before I get too far here on the budget presentation, I just wanted to just take a little beat and recognize how we arrived here. So this budget year and this past year, 2022, and we're not even all the way through it, as you know, has been incredibly tough. Tough from a planning standpoint, tough from a professional standpoint, tough from an organizational standpoint. Regardless of what field you're in, it's been unlike anything we've experienced, and we've felt that at the city as well. Certainly, budget-wise, you're going to hear some of that tonight in talking and preparing for 2023. We have really asked a lot of you and your leadership over the last 24 months, and tonight isn't going to be any different. It's easy for us as a staff to tell you there's an airplane in the air, and there's another airplane in the air, and there's one, but they're all coming in sort of for a landing at once. And we've charged you with being the air traffic controllers on a lot of things, if you think about the speed at which we're moving. We are really drinking from that proverbial fire hose, and I wish that we could turn that off, but we won't be turning it off in 2023. We have a lot of federal dollars in play, and that's exciting. And it's also intimidating because we're asking you to move and make decisions at speeds and on things that we haven't ventured into before. So I say that because one of the things that I think that we don't always do is give ourselves a little credit and pat ourselves on the back and recognize success a little bit. So we haven't landed all the planes smoothly. We won't land all the planes smoothly in 2023. But so far we've gotten them all down. And, you know, I think that we have a great team of folks who are pilots who are helping guide us to make those decisions and helping you guide you to make those decisions. So I just wanted to recognize that because we haven't always, as I said, done a good job of recognizing your leadership and then kind of warning you that we're going to continue to call on that leadership and you're going to have to continue to summon that. And we'll be there with you to do that. So with that said, the budget you have before you is $81,419,853. To my knowledge, that's the largest budget that's ever been proposed or presented to the City Commission in Yankton's history. There might have been a couple that creeped up in the 70 million sort of amount, but this would be the largest budget to date, and largely that's because of all the federal dollars that are at play, the wastewater and water projects that we're planning. As you know, those are coming up. We also have a large project at the airport. with the construction of the North Taxiway. We also have FEMA dollars at play, so that's the reason for that large increase. So when we say $81 million budget, it's easy for people to think, wow, we have all this money to spend. But a lot of that's, as you know, dedicated to specific projects in specific areas. I'm not going to go through all 81 million. In fact, I'm going to sort of hit the highlights that are in the budget letter and then give you and the public time to ask questions if they have it, and if we have time for questions. Also, for you to ask questions of the department heads. We do have at least one department head who has fire drill tonight, so Chief Linke may be exiting sooner, so if you want to get your questions into him, probably sooner rather than later if you have them. But really, I asked all the department heads to be here because they've all had to make sacrifices and they'll all have to continue to make sacrifices. And the way of that we operate anymore is when one person has a major project, we need everybody's input and everybody's support. So you might see some movement here in the room when people need to leave, but please don't feel free to interrupt me if you do have a specific question for me or for one of the department heads. In this $81 million budget, you're going to see some changes in operations and services, unlike what we've had before. A lot of them have been talked about, but we haven't necessarily had to make them. This is the year we have to make them, and we'll talk about why in just a second. Reminder to everyone that the budget is a plan. It's planned revenue, planned expenses. We're always generous when we budget our planned expenses, so we try to be generous in that, and then we try to be conservative when we budget revenue, and that's because we don't want to be wrong. And we were even more so this year because there's so much uncertainty, and just so much surprise that's happened, supply chain wise, inflation wise, etc. So it's been a tough one to estimate, so we're being generous when we do that. A lot of the things that everyone else is experiencing are going to impact the city as an organization in an even greater way. So almost everything we do is intense in terms of gasoline that we use, chemical that we use, oil, etc. We have a huge fleet of vehicles, makes a big difference. So we actually, are seeing 2022 utilities for facilities up 90%. That's a lot. We're planning that some of our gasoline, oil, diesel, lubricants, all that, we're planning for, I think, 475, so almost 500,000, 475,000 more. And that's going to have a big impact on our general fund. So we have to make choices. We're at the point where we have to make choices and set priorities because we don't have an option. We have to continue to provide our services and live our mission. I said in the budget letter, we can't falter. We can't stop answering the 911 call or helping out folks when they're having the worst days in our community. That's what we're charged with doing, and so we have to make sure we can do that. It's not all gloom and doom, of course. We're growing too. We've seen sales tax growth, and we have growth on the horizon, and we'll talk about some projects today that could mean really great and big things for our community. Right now, our growth is not keeping up with inflation in terms of sales tax, so we have to think about that. And we just have to be a little more mindful when we make decisions and decide what's serving us, what isn't, what we have to provide, and what we can provide, and make appropriate choices. So that's one of the things that I want the public to have as a takeaway here. Apart from inflation, we all know the situation with the labor market. It's tight and it's competitive, and we have to compete to get good people, and we have to strive to continue to keep good people, and we have a lot of good people, and we need to invest in them. They're our human capital. They're the ones that are able to do all these complex, difficult projects, and experts in the field, in their respective fields. So we'll talk about what we've budgeted for wages. We'll talk a little bit about benefits and those types of things as well this evening, but certainly that is one of our most important things that we need to invest in is our human capital. How am I doing so far? I got to take a drink of water here. We're also going to talk a little bit about rates and fees. So you all understand, but for the public's benefit, it's not like at home where you get paychecks in and you can decipher how to use that money. You know, some of our funds are restricted. So it's not as easy as, you know, we're having a hard time operating in one area so we can increase water rates, for example. You all know because you've been involved in that that's not how the budget works. So in some places we can have a little flexibility, but in a lot of places we can't. So when we come to the commission with changes in rates and fees for certain areas, it's not because we think we're going to be able to make money in that fund or be able to you know, treat an entity or a facility as a revenue, a source of revenue. It's to really keep up with our costs when we know we're constricting. And so where we don't need to do that, and we'll talk about areas where we don't need to do that, we don't. So it's confusing to people why we might have to, you know, change one service, but we're not increasing, for example, water rates, which is not something that's being proposed this year. But that's an area where we have an appropriate fund balance for what we believe we're going to have in revenue for the things we need to do there, so we don't need to do that. But that can't solve an issue, for example, at the library, just by means of an example. So I just want people to understand who don't spend the hours and hours poring over the budget like we all have. That was a joke that didn't land very well. A tough crowd. So I also want to really talk a little bit about where we get our revenue, and I think that's on page 31. For people in the public, if you haven't gone to the Citizen's Guide to the Budget, I feel like that's a really good thing to look at for people just to get an idea. So when you look at this pie chart of where we have our revenue, where our revenue comes from, you can see that breakdown. And I just want to point out two things. I want to point out that in 2023, 30% of that is a fund balance. So 30% of our revenue for next year is money we're not spending this year, which is why it's so important that our department heads, and they remain to be good stewards of what we what we have. Now, some of that, there's unexpected things that happen, so that can fluctuate, but that's a lot of money that goes to our next year's budget. I also want to talk a little bit about sales tax, and we are in a good position now. We've had positive sales tax returns for the last few months. Those returns are not necessarily keeping up with the rate of inflation, but we are sales tax driven, and we've talked about that before. It's important for the public to know that, yes, chicken breast might be cheaper at Costco than they are at Hy-Vee in Yankton. That's a possibility, I don't know, but when you dial 911, it is not a dispatcher at Sioux Falls Metro that picks up the phone. It's Julia or Kim or one of our people. So investing in Yankton and investing your dollars in Yankton puts money back into departments like dispatch, police, fire, parks. And when we buy things, in Sioux City or Sioux Falls, we're investing in their parks and their streets and their infrastructure. And I don't want to do that, and I don't think most people do either, but I just wanted to make that clear. That's why we talk about that so much, is reinvesting in what we have here. So I think always a good reminder. So also, one really great thing that we now have is the advantage of having sales tax revenue from online sales. A few years ago, we didn't have that. So that's something that I think makes a difference as well, because there are some things that are difficult to buy in town. But if you can buy them in town, please, a reminder, everyone should do that. I had more examples, but you just know what I bought for groceries then. So let's talk about big changes, and here's where you might have a little bit of discussion and want to talk a little bit more. I guess we had a prequel or a trailer in the public about the Summit Activity Center. And you're getting feedback about that now. I'm getting feedback about that now. So you'll see in the budget letter that, and in the budget that we are recommending that as of 1/1, we no longer operate fitness. So the fitness facility portion of the Summit Activity Center. And you all know, because we've talked about it for a number of years, but for the public's benefit, that we've had a loss of membership, continuing to decline membership numbers. We've had to increase our transfer to the general fund, 250 to almost 600,000. I mean, we talked earlier about a $500,000 increase in fuel and utilities. So, right there, you can see that there's give and take. Fitness, of course, has changed. I think when that facility opened, it filled a void that really existed in our community in a huge way. There wasn't a community workout or fitness center, and I think it filled a huge gap, and it was a real win for Yankton. Since that time, the private sector has come on board and chosen that as one of the things that it provides. So we're competing, and we all know how well, I say that tongue-in-cheek, we do when we compete with the private sector. We don't do as well. And sports has changed. We're in a partnership with the school. Also, who could have thought that you could, live stream a workout in 1992? No one knew that, and you can, and people do. So for those reasons and more, we're making that recommendation. We are talking with outside entities that may perhaps want to operate that facility as a fitness facility. We are talking through that. I don't have any firm announcement to make. That may or may not come to fruition. We will be talking through that with the help of the city school committee, as well as commission as a whole, if we get to that point. That might look like them operating the entire operation, or perhaps hanging on to aquatics. The intention is that if we do not find that operator, we will still operate aquatics, and of course we'll operate the recreation leagues. We will just be doing that differently than we have in the past. So aquatics, for example, we will have scheduled open swims where we have scheduled guards to come and staff those open swims. However, if you are a lap swimmer, an adult lap swimmer, you'll be able to access that facility. It will be unguarded, as it is now at times, but so we're making those plans. They're not firm and clear yet, but this is a change that will be made at the first of the year. So we're anticipating trying to communicate as much as we can. Tonight, we don't have the clear, here's what's going to happen to an aquatics membership, for example, or who's going to lease what or rent what. If those options don't come to fruition, we're going to have to sit down and talk about what it is we're going to do. One question I've got is, how much will the city save by not operating this facility? And my answer to that is nothing. We're not going to save any money. That money, we need to reallocate that to things that we need to, priorities that you're going to make this evening and as you go through the adoption of the budget process. So there isn't a cost savings. It's really a reallocation. Our costs have gone up. The recommendation comes to you because myself, and in talking with staff and talking throughout the years, it's really probably not responsible to continue to put that kind of transfer in with the membership numbers we don't have and the cost of operating that facility. And unfortunately, too, I will say, COVID really hit that facility hard, and that's nobody's fault, but that was really the final acknowledgement to me that we have to do something different. It will might be worse in some people's opinion, or maybe better, but we definitely have to do something different. So I'm going to stop there for a sip of water and to see what questions or feedback you have on that. because I'm sure the public is contacting you.
Amy, remind me again how many members received that letter?
Todd Larson is saying 710, and I believe we posted it on Facebook as well, linked it to Facebook so people can access that. Even if you're not a member, it's a good explanation of what and why, like how we got there, and then, for people to want to come and give public feedback, we put tonight's meeting as a budget meeting where we'll be discussing more, so more understanding can come, and then you will have, of course, a public hearing, and you will also have a first reading. So there's some time yet to have people communicate. However, as you know, that's something we've all discussed, and so realize that we are at that point where we need to start talking about change.
Amy, the percentage that you use in here to reflect inflation, 9.1% as of June of 2022, just to better qualify that, that's nationwide. We don't have a specific local number that determines that's telling us what our inflation is, correct?
I don't have a local number, and I believe we use a national number. I even think that might be a little bit, the national number might be a little bit less today than it was in June when we drafted the budget. There is a CPI for the Midwest that we can, look at certain things. We've used that, for example, when we talk about wages. I'm not sure how valuable that is. They have Midwest towns under 50,000. We're a lot south of 50,000, and I also feel like some of the things we're seeing in inflation, and this is all my opinion, I'm not an economist whatsoever, but in my opinion, a lot of things where we're seeing inflation are things that hit us in rural South Dakota the hardest. Transportation, for example, those types of costs, because we're further away from some of the bigger markets. So I feel like in those areas, some areas we may be worse than the national average, and some areas we might be a whole lot better. So correct, it's not a local Yankton or South Dakota number. Other questions you're hearing about the Summit Activity Center, or?
Amy, what was the reallocation amount that you're expecting by ceasing fitness? Or have you figured that out?
Well, part of that was going to depend upon what we end up doing. So we haven't completely figured that out. But we do know that we're going to be downsizing our employee numbers in terms of part-time staff and full-time staff at the Summit Activity Center. Also, there's some things that just won't need to occur or would occur by a private entity if they were leasing the space. For example, janitorial services is something that we pay for, and over the course of the year, that's a pretty big number. That's something that, if we were able to find the operator, would be something that was, taken care of. Now, the most expensive part of operating the Summit Activity Center, this will be a good segue into what we're going to talk about next and later tonight, is that Aquatics Facility. I mean, there is a reason why the private sector does not open a lot of swimming pools in towns our size, or parks in towns our size, because they're hard to make float. I mean, they're expensive. Chemicals, heating, the humidity in an indoor pool especially is hard on equipment, hard on things. So that's the largest part of the expense. So I don't want people to come away with this by thinking like, our financial issues there are fine now if we don't operate fitness. This is just it's a small change in the picture of recreation and fitness, but I think it's important to look at where do we not compete with someone else? I think that's an element of the conversation to have, versus what do we do that others don't. So currently, I don't believe Avera has any lap swimming, or they don't have a small pool, I don't think, in their fitness. They do. Okay, so they have one, but it is not to the scale that our aquatics, indoor or outdoor, is. I know Great Life does not. So that's something that we don't have in the private sector, so I do feel is appropriate for us to continue with and prioritize. Of course, ultimately, that's up to you as a commission.
And something else the public may not appreciate is how many capital expenditures we're obligated to maintain as part of our agreement with the school district. Like next year, we're looking at almost $156,000 in capital improvements that this decision to close fitness is probably not going to impact.
No, we still have to take care of the building, right? So, and we still have to, commit with the school district, fulfill our commitment with the school district. One of the things that they're working on their facilities is roof replacement, and that will impact us, maybe not next year, but in future years at the Summit Activity Center. And so we still have capital obligations that we have to meet and will meet. So should we substantially change with, things, we will have to negotiate. We are in an agreement with the Yankton School District, and we'll have to make changes there as well. And we've already, started having that discussion at a staff level. But until we have acknowledgement that, we're moving forward in this way, those things have been preliminary. Other questions on SAC or things you want to talk about there? If not, we'll keep talking about aquatics, but we'll talk about the Huther Family Aquatic Center and how what we're proposing this evening. As you know, on your regular commission agenda, you have a resolution to consider about putting together a cash restricted fund for future operations and maintenance and capital. And what you do with that will be, your decision this evening. As it's in the budget today, we put as proposed, as discussed, that we were going to propose a $2 million amount to go into that, restricted cash for future operations, maintenance, capital. That number, just to remind people, if they weren't clear, that $2 million came from the history of what was discussed back in 2018, 2017, with the then commission and Dive and Yankton, of the intention of the city putting already current city dollars, which we know are public dollars, towards that project. So we went back and did the watching of the videos and the history, and not every single meeting was recorded, but from what we could put together, we believe that was the intention of the commission and the discussion of the commission's commitment at the time. Fortunately, and to our surprise, the bids for that project came in well below what was estimated. In fact, millions below what was estimated. We really hit a sweet spot that I bet we might not ever hit again. So really fortunate on that project. So it's exciting here, and the way I described it to one of you is we have cake. And I've never had cake before when it comes to a project like this. So now I'm just telling you, you can slice up that cake in a number of different ways. How you choose to do it is up to you. One thing that we won't be able to tell you for certain with a sure degree of certainty is if you take that $2 million out this evening later on in your meeting, what is the remaining balance? The reason why we don't have that is we still have journal entries from 2021 that we need to complete there. We are still doing some final projects. So if you've been water walking, you see that middle area that we had as a grassed area, it just didn't take the grass, just didn't hold. We decided a different treatment was better for that. So we're going to do a concrete project there. It just didn't play out the way we had hoped it would. There was some technology that we cut. And we did that because we were so worried about the bidding environment and where things were going to come out. We have funds to do that. But there will be, we feel really comfortable that there will be over $1 million that if you want to keep in that construction fund, even after you take $2 million out, there'll be over $1 million there that in 2025 December, if the seated commission then wants to pay down the bond early, can. But I want to be clear that you can leave it all in that construction account, and that all could be, taken to pay down the bond. It could be 1 million, and you can slice that any way. And you don't have to do any of it. Just trying to give options, and the reason we're giving options is once it's out of the construction fund, you have flexibility, more flexibility with it. So what I would recommend is if you take anything out of that construction fund, and apart from an emergency at the Aquatic Center, if there's a project that comes up or a situation that comes up, say, a slide breaks down and it's a matter of do we want to replace that slide this year or not, it would be, in my mind, a little bit like the perpetual care cemetery. I would come forward to you and say, the yellow slide, has broken down. We'd like to replace it with this, at this amount, with this fund, so that who's ever at the commission at that time can make that decision. I'm hoping that's where we're at, and it's a capital situation. It could be, if things get tight and hard, it could be an operational situation. Because in years where we have, tight budgets, and there was a year I was here where I think our sales tax increase was just 1%, I don't want to have built this beautiful facility and have to restrict, how we operate it, or restrict one of the other quality of life things we do, or some of the other quality of life things do, so we can't operate full schedule. That's just what's in my mind. You all probably have ideas, and I know you're going to give direction this evening, but I wanted to tell you what's in the budget and some of our thought process behind it. So I'm sure you'll have some questions there.
So you think it'll be more than $1 million? Can you give a range? Is it going to be up to 2 million perhaps, or?
I don't think it'll be 2 million. I would say it'll be, are we comfortable north of 1.5? It depends upon how much we spend here, and we just had a $235,000 adjustment. So I think all the bills are in at this point. But we also want to take that 250 we talked about, with the difference between the shortage of the opt-out and the debt service. So we want to take that certainly off the top for I think it's the 5 years. So that's about 250,000. So, but there'll be a substantial amount, which is why we're comfortable as a staff recommending that. But some of it, none of it, all can be deciphered.
And as I look at the capital plan, like next year, we have $4,000 in capital budgeted for the Either Family Aquatic Center. $4,000.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't expect pumps to go down or slides to break at all. And some of that stuff is still on a warranty, but we budgeted real limited capital there, as we always have at the Aquatic Center. So that's really the only discretionary money. So if something were to happen mid-season and you didn't have a fund, we'd come to you and say, something needs to be repaired. We only have $4,000 in capital. What do you not want to do somewhere else in capital, perhaps? Or here's what we recommend you not do, or where you take from. So, because the operating is really going to be set. I mean, we have to pay the utilities, we have to pay the lifeguards. That won't really be something you can move around.
Amy, you had mentioned working with the contractor to put together a projection of sorts that, they could give us an idea, if anything, at just a high level of potential expenses we may have to look forward to in the next, 5-10 years. Are we going to see that at some point?
You are going to see it when it's complete. We contacted, is it Water Technologies, Doug, Water Technologies, I just couldn't remember, who is the consultant Stockwell used. They're going to put that together for us. There's a cost for them to put that together, but they're going to put that sort of projected capital plan together for us. Now, again, we probably won't replace things just like in our own capital plan, just because it's up for replacement, but what we can expect for life of different things. So yes, when we have that, we will share it with you. We don't have that completed yet, but we have initiated, told Water Technologies to go ahead and put that together for us.
But no idea when we're going to see it.
I don't have a timeline.
We haven't had an official meeting with them yet. It happens on Thursday. It was supposed to be this afternoon, Thursday.
So if you didn't hear Todd, we were supposed to meet with them today, apparently, but they have moved that meeting till Thursday. So we'll have a timeline for you next week, I presume.
So are any of these funds, so the 1.5 million extra, are any of these funds restricted at all as far as use?
Al, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Part of it will be, and again, that's a number, we don't have the exact figure yet, but of the pool funds that came from the bond proceeds, the net that we got in after fees was $13,907,500. That $13,907,500 is committed to capital for the project and/or future debt service. So again, until we know the final figure on the project itself and the projected transfers to debt service that are the shortfall until 2025, that's where it's slightly moving yet. You know, we've got some estimates, but.
So, this is a good thing. It would be great to have this problem on all projects. Like, what are we going to do with the extra dollars that we have and the bids? So just sort of on your, to the best of your ability, where you think we should go. And again, there's nothing magic about that $2 million other than that was the amount that was discussed in 2017, 2018 with the then commission. And as you know, we changed the ordinance pertaining to the second penny to allow for a little more flexibility in the general fund was how we got there. So, and we also learned that you don't remember what happened in 2018. So that's why this budget meeting is here and not in City Hall, because you don't remember what you said exactly, and you have to go, it helps to be able to go back and listen to that discussion again. So there was a couple meetings in that cycle that were in City Hall and weren't recorded. So that's why we're here tonight eating boxed Pizza Ranch, which thanks to Pizza Ranch too, by the way, for that.
So that's why I asked about earlier about the 1.5 and if some of those funds are restricted, because during being part of Dive and being part of Yes for Yankton, I can say that we, during that campaign, had told the citizens that if there was an extra amount above and beyond that is left over from construction, that we potentially could pay down sunset the opt-out early. And so I think that it's important to honor what we said we would do. Now, I realize that was Dive in and Yes for Yankton, but we were also, again, I don't have a recorder, I don't have a tape to show you, I don't have it in writing, but that was what we were instructed, and that is what we told the citizens. So for me, where I'm at, and I know we're going to talk about this later, I'm concerned that if we don't earmark some of that money specifically for paying down the opt-out or sunsetting it earlier, that it just may not happen, and that concerns me.
So, the rest of the commission's, you and I had this conversation this afternoon, but so the rest of the commission is aware, if you take $2 million, for example, or that can still be used to pay back the bond early, there's no early repayment until 2025, but you have that flexibility with that. But you also, as Commissioner Villanueva said, it could be, you could have a commission. I mean, by that time, there could be 6 of you different, I think, and you could have a commission that wants to spend all of that on, I don't know, expansion of the lazy river or something, probably. So, I mean, yes. And when we talked about the opt-out with the public, we said, yep, there is the potential. It can happen to pay back the bond early if you don't need all the funds. So whatever's left in that balance, that could all go into a restricted fund. Again, you can split it. So however you decide in your motion, I don't recommend that you say even tonight or in a different resolution, if you decide to do something different, that you commit to what happens in 2025 necessarily, rather reviewing it annually. And that might just a point that I think Commissioner Villanueva and I maybe disagree on a little bit. We didn't duke it out too badly yet. That's after the meeting. No, but I think that, I don't know what's going to happen in 2025, but I have scars because I didn't know it was going to happen in 2018. If I would have known going forward here to 2022, I wouldn't have been brave enough or to even go for this project. So, we just don't know what's going to happen, the uncertainty, and I'm very uncertain right now because it's a big amount of responsibility about the economy. So you guys get to decide that, and we're just gonna, we'll get everyone safely off the plane, but you got to tell us what runway it's going to land on tonight.
Hey, so Amy, just is it fair to say though, and I never got to attend a Diving Yankton meeting. I did attend a Stockwell's public meeting with former Commissioner Gross there, but what was never actually stated outright is the $2 million that the city is going to be contributing towards the project may be used by the city commission instead as part of a rainy day fund. That was never, expressed at.
Well, we would never use the word rainy day fund for sure. Or if your question is, was it expressed that we could, if it wasn't necessary for the project, we could take it out as a restricted cash fund?
Right, that description, eyes might glaze over in the.
Correct, but never, correct, that's more than fair, that's accurate, because never in our wildest dreams have we ever had, in my wildest dreams, have we ever had a project that didn't spend almost every penny, if not more. So if it would have been proposed or thought about, we would have responded and had Ross help us look into that and talked about what we could possibly do. But I don't recall in going back and reading those minutes and watching those meetings, didn't to hear that at all, or reflecting on the committee meetings. When we met with the finance committee, we would have never thought that possible. So correct, that was not discussed with the public either. And so we just wouldn't, maybe it was kind of a unicorn situation.
So the good news is we are in a good spot.
Yeah,
It's
great news.
And that's something to remember, is that this is a positive thing, that we have extra money.
It's phenomenal.
And that's great. But what I also want to say too is that I do realize that it's important to be good stewards of the money that was given by everyone, but also by the private donors that made this private-public project possible. And so with that being said, I want to make it clear too that I'm not saying that we shouldn't have some type of I don't know what that fund is called, Al, exactly, specifically, but a fund for maintenance, for capital, and whatever else, specifically for the Yankton Aquatics Facility. But I think it's important that we maintain something, but I really don't know if it all needs to go to that. Because again, I feel compelled to fulfill what we told people we would do, and that is paying part of that, sunsetting that bond earlier.
That's clear, and I think that's living up to when we had our conversation today, I have this in front of me, and living up to our fiscal stewardship value, and weighing that with future focus value. So,
Right.
Exactly. So I understand completely where you're coming from, and it'll be up to your body to, I just made the decision hard for you. You guys have to make the decision. So, but I want it to be clear that in the budget as it is now, it's the 2 million, but we will make the adjustments if your direction changes from that.
Okay, and again, one last question. So again, I want to make this clear that if we have approximately 3.5 million left, that none of that is restricted. It could be used towards paying the bond down early.
Yep, if you don't take any of it, if you don't put any of it in a restricted fund, that's about the only thing we can do with it.
Yep, okay. All right, but
And that's not a bad thing either, but then if we have a future situation at the Aquatic Center or a tight year for operating, we don't have.
which is also not a great situation.
No,
I realize
no,
that.
it's, yeah, but correct.
Okay.
So, and can you maybe tell us a little bit about why it's important that a decision would get made here tonight, aside from, the change to the budget and then maybe pushing out this resolution into, say, next year? Simply because we've got projects that still have to be completed. We still have information that we might act on from the
Right.
contractor. Maybe for us to then have a more informed reason behind any particular dollar amount, let alone
Yeah.
2 million.
That's a good question. Thank you for answering that, and one I should have included in my presentation. So you don't have to make a decision tonight. We have to accept the project by the 26th of September. So it doesn't have to be tonight, but it's got to be pretty soon if we're going to do something different. So we can't spend any money other than paying the bond early in 2025 out of that construction account after we accept that project. So that's why I'm telling Todd and Dwayne and Adam and get the concrete project done, purchase what you need for security cameras. We need to get this wrapped up. They give you a certain amount of time to close the project. So it doesn't have to be tonight, but it has to be pretty soon. So that's, I would say, the majority of the answer there. So taking money out and putting it in the reserve gives you still some more flexibility than leaving it all in, because then the only thing you can do is pay down early or pay it off as per schedule. But, so also just to move forward, to make a decision and move, that would be the second part of that answer for me, is just, we need to move forward and keep going and I think start on what's the next thing we're working on, and continue to move forward with all plans. We have a small project in Kyle's department that he thinks he needs to build here coming up, and it's not going to be as fun as a water slide, I can tell you that much. So, since we're talking about Kyle, can we move on a little bit to this is another thing that I want to nod to you and to our staff. We were very successful with the leveraging ARPA dollars and state revolving loan funds. I mean, $20 million, over $20 million in grant is, I can't even fathom that. And yes, we're going to have an impact on wastewater, and our community's going to have an impact on with the surcharge. But that impact could have been so much greater. You were all put in a really not fun position, and to have to make a decision, a really tough decision quickly. Ben, you remember a conversation, I call it the deck sessions, because Ben would call me, I'd be on my deck and I'd be pacing back and forth. I think there's a hole in some of the boards, talking about, what was the right thing to do. We had to make a decision, and we had to do that so we could apply for funding. And you guys were put in that position, and you made the decision. Maybe some people think it was right. I know some people think it was wrong, but we were able to leverage a huge amount of money towards a project that's going to not just serve us well, but serve our future well. Also, rewind to previous commissions. If you see previous commissioners, thank them, because we'd been talking about this project and we were ready to go. We were in the first cycle of funding, and we were awarded generously, and not a lot of communities were ready to go as we were. So that's a kudos to you and a kudos to Kyle and his department, and it's also a nod to Planning District 3. I think we spend $12 or $13, maybe $15,000 on Planning District 3. I bet you they have leveraged, I couldn't even guess, billions of dollars of investment for our community. I mean, they've done a huge amount of work for us, and so we need to be grateful for that, and just note, we need to talk about that because that's part of our plan of telling our story. And I don't think people realize that Kyle and others and Al and District 3 could have gone, yeah, and kind of shrug their shoulders and just let those funding cycles gone by and put it all on rates. And that would have made a huge, they were ready and put in the time and effort. So we're going to be ready to go, and that's going to be before you. That project's going to start coming before you in the fall with decisions, more tough decisions. How are we going to do the project? How are we going to design the project? And it's going to be unlike anything we've seen. So I wanted to talk about that. I'm going to talk just briefly about B because we talked about it so much. We did make the change that was proposed to combine the YAPG and CVB allocation into one Thrive allocation. So that change was made. I don't need to talk about the BBB and the outside agencies more unless you do. I feel like the direction was good, and it's reflected in what you have before you. Utility rates, as I said earlier, we're not recommending any increase in the flat rate. So hang on a second, for water, solid waste, and recycling, or wastewater. But your bill will be increased, public, because as the commission knows, there is that surcharge for wastewater, the $6.31 surcharge, and that was a multi-year surcharge. So that is an increase to the overall cost, the rate themselves, since it's not changing. So while we need to make choices and priorities in some areas, like I said before, we're not recommending increasing rates in funds that are restricted to those areas that we don't need the revenue. So in doing the analysis, Dwayne and Al, along with Kyle and with Adam on solid waste, have indicated, we don't think we're going to be at a point in 2023 where we need to increase the rates. We think that we're going to have enough revenue. So we haven't recommended that. I think good news, because everyone's feeling costs go up in other areas of their lives and other utilities. Not saying that's the way it'll be in 2024, but that's the way it is now. So the only recommendation, which isn't really a recommendation because you already approved it, the only thing different on utilities is that surcharge for wastewater. Any questions or any information you want to ask about that? Mostly so I can have a sip here. I can't believe you're letting the department heads off this easy. It's not fair, but projects, equipment, that kind of thing, things to try to increase efficiency a little bit here for us, and to try to do a few things that are new and innovative. You see on page 9 some of the main projects we're talking about next year, and we've been through the capital budget together already months ago, so I won't belabor them, but we've got the Marne Creek FEMA Assistance Project. That's a long time coming. That flood was in 2019, and we're going to be building it in 2023. So FEMA isn't the quickest, but we're getting there, and so that's planned. I'm going to talk about the TIDS in a second, so I'm going to leave that for now. Street projects, we have water main replacements that we're working on. Equipment and things we need to buy. We have some of those listed, and I just listed a couple of them: a loader in Public Works, various trucks and vehicles, some things in central garage, so transfer trailers. People can go through the capital and take a look at that. Part of doing our work, but also to think a little bit innovatively about our human capital. It's not just what we pay them, and it's not just what we, tell them. We also have to give them the right equipment to do their job, and we also have to innovate a little bit to help make their jobs, a little bit easier when possible. Also, employees are looking for technology advances in their places of work, and we have lost a lot of experience and knowledge, and that's okay. We're happy for people when they retire and they go off to SDRS land. Al doesn't know where that is, but he thinks. But some people have retired and gone off to that land. And we're happy about that. But for the folks that are here, is we want to keep our workplaces fresh and innovative, and we want to help people do their jobs more efficiently. And we have to, because we don't have people that have 30 or 40 years of institutional knowledge anymore. So some of those things you see that we've budgeted for, like a bike unit for patrol, that's not a motorcycle bike, so nobody get too excited. That's a road bike, and it's not, you're going to have to, it's not a Harley. The ball field leveler and groomer, that is a project that came, a piece of equipment that came actually from one of you and other folks in Ball, but realizing that makes the life of Todd's people who have to do that a lot easier, because it uses technology and faster, and maybe might even save us. Of course, there's the expense of buying the equipment, but save us on some, overtime that happens a lot on Saturdays for our people. So things of that nature, that's why I bring those up. Having a trailer and cameras for our wastewater department, that they can go out and utilize those, as opposed to, having to go get a trailer from someone, find the camera, buying that equipment so it's ready for us to use. I think those things make sense. Those are extras, and we understand that, and we treat them like that. So we realize that if there's a major breakdown of patrol cars, maybe the bike unit wouldn't cover that, but we might have to shuffle things around. But there's more reason to do those things other than just to be a neat thing to have. So that's why I bring that up. So we're continuing to our lease with Great Life Golf and Fitness, and they have some ideas for capital there, and we share capital expenses with them, and the commission knows that. Are there any capital projects that you're just kind of going, I remember this one, and is it in or is it out?
I do want to go back to the Martin Creek project.
Okay.
So is that just going to be like bank stabilization, or does that include any trail elements at this point?
It is bank stabilization, and it is the flood hazard mitigation maintenance trail replacement. So it's going to look different, but is planned to have trail, and that's that south stretch. So.
And is that the two? Is it? I saw 2.1 in the capital improvement.
I thought it was
capture
2.6, but.
I think it was 2.1.
2.4?
2.4. Okay.
Oh, 2 spread over each year. So 2 million
So this
in 1
and
year.
next year. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for the question. I would be remiss. Does anybody watch CBS Sunday Morning besides my sister and I? Okay, good, because I was like, if I just entered into the land of what people watch on Sunday mornings. But so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention pickleball, and my friend Marilyn Wilson's working hard to raise money for the pickleball's portion of that project. She also forwarded to me sort of a sign-in list of people who wanted you to know that they really want you to look favorably upon their joint project of pickleball resurfacing between the city and those folks. If you do watch CBS Sunday Morning, or I have the link, I can send it to you. There was a history of pickleball, which I didn't know. And calling somebody a dinker is not a bad thing. So if you're a good dinker, it's not a bad thing.
I also didn't know they named it after a dog.
I didn't
named
either.
Pickle.
Pickle. So that all good
Pickle's
stuff.
the dog.
But they're working hard there on.
Who chased the ball to bring it back to the court.
He did.
Hence.
He did. So they're working hard for that, and I wanted to mention that because I know that you'll probably hear from them. And bless Marilyn's heart, I saw her at Music at the Meridian with a little sign, I think, that people could come and talk to her about pickleball. So they're raising that, and that's a project where we're splitting that cost of that. So I just wondered if there was other capital projects that you were kind of like, where did that land? Because at the time we talked to you, it was May or June, and we were not very far in the budget.
How about just the strategy behind that? So it sounds like it might be like halvesies between, funds that they raise and what the city may contribute.
Yes, I mean, certainly if they can raise all of it, great. But, what we talked about was a split. The turf project, for example, of the what do we call it? The infield of the turf at the small field at Riverside Park, that's another joint project, that's a three-way share if we can get all the groups, we have it budgeted that way, if we get all the groups to be able to participate. So that's kind of, for the public's benefit, how projects sometimes rise to the top when there's a private contribution. But yes, I'm hoping for at least a 50-50 on the pickleball. It sounds like now they play pickleball outside our building because we have masonry repair going, so we're hearing constant noise. Any other capital projects that you want to talk about?
With TID number 12, tax increment district number 12.
Yeah, well, those are their own special
Yeah.
discussion. How am I doing for time? 6:30? Is it 6:30? Oh, I better get going here. Let me talk quickly about TID 11 and TID 12. TID 11 is the Gale Drive Manitou TID. That is a project where the Yankton Thrive is actually the developer, but we're sort of a special host because of some of the grant dollars that they were able to leverage with the state of South Dakota. So in that TID plan, you have already approved the plan, so you've already said, we're going to do a TID. The details of that plan are coming forward, and we're working through those with Thrive right now. So that will be coming before the Thrive board and in front of you to consider. But in that instance, Thrive is a developer. That gives, this project is exciting for us as a city because it gives us an opportunity to get sewer to that area of town and provide future capacity up north. So when Paxton takes over for the Mason, move with Mason's commercials and be moved with Paxton, there'll be houses there, there'll be land there served by infrastructure, and that's really exciting. We can't do that with Thrive and without the investment of Manitou and future projects, but that opens a lot of area up for industrial development too, so we're excited about that. TID number 12 is also equally exciting, but it's very different. So TID number 12 is the Paradigm 33rd Street Broadway TID. That TID is not going to be as high a performer. So we are the developer there, and you all know that you're leasing land to soccer up there. So if we were selling land to not just Paradigm, but another entity, revenue generating entity, there would be more TIF generated income. We're leasing that land, so we're the owner there, so we are the developer, and we're going to have some loss there that isn't going to perform as well. We know that, we anticipate that, but that's not a reason not to do it. You all looked at that as there's other types of investment other than just industrial, commercial investment. There's the recreational, the capital investment, and we are also, in a way, partnering then with soccer and the good things they're doing up there. That is in the kitchen right now, and Dave Mingo's the chef, and he's getting that whipped up, and we'll be serving that to you, sometime later this fall for the plan and the agreement, the TID agreement. So, more questions on the TID?
Yeah, so that means we won't see any construction till next year, or, okay.
It's dry, so it's possible that we might see something before then. Last quick thing before I get to your questions, and Chief Linke, if you need to leave, you certainly can do that. Personnel. So I want to talk about this because our persons are so important. So in our labor contracts, AFSCME and FOP, the negotiated cost of living increase, or COLA, as we say, was 3%. Not what we're recommending. We're recommending 6%. We're aware that 6% is what the state's proposing to do. We think that 6% is what we need to do, at least to stay consistent and not get behind. Also, in addition to that, the 1.23% for folks eligible for a step, we have a 20-step salary scale. So in combination, then, for some, it will look like 7.236%. So wanted to talk about that with you if you want to, but that is in the budget. We also provide health insurance, as you know, for our employees. Our current provider of our health plan recommended, told us that we could have a guaranteed 10% rate if we went through their wellness screening. We all did that and provided an incentive for employees to do that. So that is our renewal rate. We're still looking at other vendors just in case something comes back better for our group. But we budgeted 12%, and why we did that is we want to look at EAP for our employees. We have EAP currently. We're looking at enhancements to that. That's a real issue for our employees and something that we want to make sure we're looking at as an option. Also, disability insurance is something that's been brought up to look at as an option. You guys will get to vote on all these proposals if they come forward. Also looking at perhaps layering our health insurance with a Vera Health plan or with another entity, if that's who we go with, to offer a rate that's a little more attractive for families. Our family plan is not inexpensive, and so we want to look at ways we can be creative there. So for those of us that are on that, so that's why it's 12% budgeted. Just in this day and age, it's not just anymore. You know, when we initially started talking about EAP, we always had it for other employees, but we talked a lot about our emergency services. I'm here to tell you that, and you all know that, things have gotten hard everywhere, and EAP is a service that every employee needs. It's an important one, and so if we may want to make some enhancements to that. We have an insurance committee, and they'll be making recommendations there. So before I get your questions, I will say, you know, I'm submitting this with more caution and less optimism than in the past, but I still think that we have an incredible team of people here helping guide your decisions, great leadership at the city, and a really good future. So again, thank you for your patience this year, and I will happy to answer questions, and I know the department heads are really excited to get some mic time too, if you have questions for them.
I may have asked this last time, and this is a very small piece of our budget, but with the active transportation plan, where are those funds going to next year?
Yeah. So Adam or Todd might have to help me out. I believe we have them allocated to this year to West Side Park for additional trail, and future years to the Broadway 33rd Street, thanks Chief, project, but let me go to the expert here.
That is correct. So this year, we have funds allocated towards the West Side Park area, as well as West City Limits Road north of 23rd. There's a gap in that area. That'll make a continuous loop for a large segment of trail. And then we're looking at the 19th and Douglas intersection. That area that came up as a request. And then Amy was correct. Next year, funds will be going towards that 33rd and Broadway project area. So,
The pedestrian parts of that project.
the pedestrian parts, yes. As well as any sidewalk replacement, reimbursement requests that come in, or oversizing requests, those come in regularly too, so.
And I'm hoping, I don't want to surprise the staff, but I'm hoping, since we have some planned projects already, that then we can go back to the active transportation plan and reevaluate, because it's been, I think it was 2017 or 2018 that we looked at that.
Yeah, I think we started that in 2016.
So we've done some projects. We need to update that and figure out where do we need to look at the Complete Streets sort of program into the future. It seems like we just did that, but it was quite a while ago, so.
I want to say something to the department heads while we have them all here.
Yeah.
I just want to say that thank you to all the department heads for all that you do. You are appreciated and you are important. You've hung your hat in Yankton for whatever reason you have, but I know that I realize that there's probably lots of other places you could do that and lots of other cities you could go to with your skills. And so I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, how much you mean to me and how much you mean to us, our citizens, and thank you for being here and doing what you do.
Well said. It takes a lot of good work to make me look good. and they do it. They do it. So we're really lucky. And I think we have a phenomenal team right now. Better than I've ever worked with in my career. So I'm just really excited of where we're going to take this team.
So next year, we're going to start with the comprehensive plan, revisiting that, updating it, which is pretty exciting because it's something we only do every 20 or so years. So can you tell us a little bit about how that's going to play out?
Sure. I've got an RFP already substantially completed, and the first thing will be, when we get to the point where we want to begin that process, will be to have you review that and the Planning Commission also weigh in on the contents of that. We were hopeful to get started earlier, but with the way the 2020 census data release is occurring, that data forms the foundation for any recommendations or considerations that we really want to talk about with the comp plan. So we really need that critical piece of information out there. We're hearing that's going to be February, March, April of next year when that is finally available. So I have every hope in the world that we start this RFP process here November, December, and we have our team put together and our steering committee put together so that we can go through that process. The other thing is with that active transportation plan, I think if the timing's right, that ends up maybe being a chapter of the comp plan too.
Oh.
So.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so there's lots of options and lots of things to include in that discussion, and hopefully get through that in about 18 months beginning March.
And I don't know, Mayor, if you are done with your discussion, if you want to open your discussion up to others, or how you want to handle that, I can step down.
Yeah, it's a quiet group tonight, I guess, up here. Any other questions from the city commissioners? Yes,
I do have
Mason.
one question. So I was looking back at the 2022 and 2021 budgets, and the percent of fund balance carried over in each of those years. It was 30% this year, proposed 36 in 2022, and 32 in 2021. Is that indicative of your budgeting and savings while you're working throughout the year, or is that just hard to plan for growth that we didn't see coming and we've got extra money coming in? I mean, what's your feel on why the 30% seems to be 32% seems to be an average for the last 3 years?
I'm going to let Dwayne answer that.
So I would say that's a combination of a couple of different things. One of the things that I think has played into that over the past couple of years is the fact that we've had very large projects in the hopper that maybe didn't finish in a timely manner, so that those expenditures got carried over into the next budget year, and we were still. So for instance, like the water treatment plant, some of that money probably got included in 3 budgets. And so a portion of that was already allocated. Part of the reason that we have additional funds carried into this year will be, of course, because of all of the federal dollars that we were able to access because of COVID. And so that definitely made a big difference. I'm probably a little bit more of the rainy day part of it as far as from the financial side, coming from my economics background, but, realistically, we deficit spend every year, the city does. The year that we don't have any money to carry over will be the year that it's very difficult to come up with a balanced budget for the next year. So it's kind of a little bit of a two-edged sword. I think that we definitely have had some revenues come in, and like Amy mentioned earlier, we are very conservative with our revenue projections. It's much easier to come to the end of the year and go, we were conservative, we have maybe another % of revenue and sales tax, or maybe another 0.5% in property tax. We're going to bring those monies into the next year and include them in that budget cycle. So kind of a long answer, but I think that's part of the reason that we've seen that, so.
Any other questions from the City Commission? Anybody in the public want to ask questions related to the budget? Okay.
The microphone's in a better position over here. Okay. Scotty Borman, KYNT Radio. On the activities at the Summit Activity Center, we were just sort of wondering, does the school district have, the activities department have facilities already, apart from that, for the athletes to work out in, weight room, that type of stuff?
They do. My understanding is most of the training, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, is happening with Coach Rosie programs, and that's conducted at the Great Life Facility in Mount Marty or Mount Marty's Fieldhouse area. He's nodding his head yes. So most of that conditioning does not occur in our facility. Now, in this, I guess the exception to that is the practice of basketball or volleyball that goes on in the gymnasiums. But we share, and our current agreement is the city is to have a reserved court space in the auxiliary gym, and the other gyms are for the high school sports and practice.
Okay. And by the way, would everybody like to hear a really cool story I heard of this weekend about the county fair? You're all aware that the judges there don't just judge the animals or the projects that are presented, right? They also judge the knowledge of the children. We must have some pretty smart children, because in the poultry judging, one of the judges asked this little girl, "Do you know what color eggs your chicken lays?" She looked really concerned. It was like, "He doesn't lay eggs. It's a rooster." So, extra points for her, I think.
Are there any other questions from the public? All right, having no other questions from the City Commission and no other questions from the public, you can see item number 4 under our agenda is to determine if a second night is needed for a budget workshop. I'm assuming that nobody up here feels that we need a second night for the budget workshop. Okay, we will eliminate that. All right, there is no other business in front of the City Commission tonight as far as it relates to the budget workshop. So with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the budget workshop session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Anybody abstaining? All right, workshop session on the budget is adjourned. We will start with the regular City Commission meeting promptly at 7.